Hey, it's Samantha Hartley of the Profitable Joyful Consulting Podcast. This season, we're talking about the brand called you. And one of the most important things you can do to protect yourself in your business and to evolve as a person is to work on your boundaries. We've done a session on boundaries before, but today I wanted to put a new and different spin on it and talking about boundaries at work. And I have some amazing guests with me today, so let me introduce them. Melissa Dinwiddie is the founder and CEO of Creative Sandbox Solutions, a consultancy that specializes in helping innovative people-first companies grappling with boring or non-existent virtual trainings and events. She designs creative, interactive, playful experiences that attendees rave about because they acquire new skills and behaviors and build connections all while having fun. My second guest is Kathy Klotz-Guest, MA, MBA. She's the founder of Keep It Human, Inc., and an author, professional speaker, and comedian who still performs and teaches. Kathy is on a mission to reimagine the story of humor in our lives and at work because it's human. She spent 16 years in Silicon Valley leading marketing, communications, and storytelling programs and teams. She also spent 23 years on comedy stages. Today, she combines those backgrounds to help leaders, teams, and companies use humor and improv principles to be bolder and braver in shaping their culture, communications, and storytelling for change. Welcome, Kathy and Melissa.
Hey, Samantha, great to be here.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so fun topic for all of us. Why, with your improv and comedy backgrounds, did you feel called to make up a program and to come and talk to me today about boundaries?
Well, I know Kathy and I have, the two of us individually and together in our conversations, we're noticing that a lot of women in our circle and outside of our circle were talking about boundary issues. It's kind of an epidemic.
Yeah.
And we just started chatting about it and realized that, this is something that we could develop a program around with our combined skills, our combined expertise, using improv together. And we thought, why not put something together? Why not put together a program?
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah,
How about you, Kathy?
I think it really started with Melissa and I noticing sort of even in our own lives, the lessons. And we thought, it's scary. That's why people avoid it. And yet it's so profoundly important because it sucks so much energy from us and it doesn't need to do that. So we thought, well, what if we change the conversation to something playful and profound and productive and did it in a way that sort of cut through a lot of the fear that people have in drawing boundaries. So we thought, let's use our improv backgrounds and just go there.
Yeah. Awesome. So can you tell me a story of somebody that you worked with who was having a boundaries issue and then you did a little of your magic with them and then it really improved that situation?
I'll start with myself actually, because for me, coming from tech and all these different worlds that were very male dominated, one of the things that I had to learn was to push back and stand up for myself. And I had to learn that sometimes the chivalry cavalry wasn't like I turn around and nobody was there.
Yeah.
Ain't no one had my back. So I had to sort of, bone up and realize that part of really owning who you are in the world and doing the work you need to do is being able to draw boundaries and not feel guilty or shamed or any of that. So I think one of the things I did was really start to push that out. And I found that humor and playfulness and also, unapologeticness, be unapologetic about it actually worked.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of the advice I would give to other people as well.
What's an example of a boundary violation that would happen to you?
I'll tell a story of actually in getting together to work on creating this program. At one point, we had a date to get together, and for whatever reason, I don't even remember, that date couldn't happen, and so it fell off the calendar, and the ball was in my court to set up another date. And I just never set the date. I never reached out to Kathy. And at some point a few weeks later, Kathy sent me a message and she said, I'm calling an audible. You are clearly not interested in making this happen. So I'm just going to take it and I'm going to do it on my own. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. Thank you, first of all, for calling me out. And can we have a conversation? And in the course of that conversation, because she drew that boundary, I was able to realize what was going on inside of me, why I hadn't thrown the ball back to her, because I was experiencing some anxiety, some fear, and some feeling like, oh my God, am I, Kathy, I have a lot of admiration for Kathy. And there were some issues that were happening that because we had this conversation, because I trusted Kathy so much, I was able to bring up my feelings. We were able to have this great conversation and to be able to establish these are the boundaries that we can proceed forward within.
Mm-hmm. And so what were those boundaries specifically?
That, if the ball is in your court, you need to, send it back. And if you have feelings, if you're having any concerns, just bring them up. Mm-hmm. Don't sit there and, and just like hermitize and hide away, because then I'm going to move forward without you.
Yeah.
And, knowing that and having it just out on the table, just clearly laid out, that, and being able to have that conversation openly and have those parameters set enabled me to feel safe. To be able to say, Kathy, I'm having this feeling, or okay, Kathy, let's make an appointment, or whatever it was, and it totally cleared the air, and we were able to proceed. So within creating this program together on boundaries, we had a situation where we had to establish clear boundaries.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I want to kind of do a lightning round on examples of boundary violations, because I feel like the one that you're describing is kind of like an unconscious one. And I think there are intentional boundary violations and then unintentional ones and unconscious ones. And there's just so many potential ones of them that they can be like, the things that come to mind are obviously, or, person standing too close to me when I'm in a line, person who asks me a question that I consider to be a personal question. Maybe they don't. Somebody assuming that, as you're saying, that I'm doing something that I'm maybe not doing, and then I don't get to it. So can you guys like lightning round with me a couple of other examples of boundary violations, just so we all kind of are talking about similar things?
One, I think a big one is when we ask women to do stuff for free, or a woman says, no, I can't do something, and somebody doesn't take that no as a boundary and keeps pushing till they try to get what they want. That one happens a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that can happen. I mean, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is, sexual situations, but there's also like, and dating and things like that, but also, hey, can you volunteer for this job at church, work, volunteer organization in our family? Why don't you take care of whatever? And somebody says no, and no doesn't mean no, I'm hearing.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? Okay. Yeah. Other examples?
Another one is just setting pricing for, like, we're all entrepreneurs here. So setting your price and getting pushback. Yeah. That's another boundary issue.
Will you do it for half that price?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I get a lot of with myself. Well, I promise I'm going to wrap this up and go to bed at 10 p.m. And then it's 11:30 and I'm starting at something new or something like that. So I've talked a lot about self boundaries, that they're, if I expect other people to respect my boundaries, I have to be better with my own conversation with myself. So that's one that I've really started to pay attention to.
Yeah. Which brings up just the whole, like, what are you doing in your life?
Yeah.
All the things that you're doing in your life, who are you doing them for? Are you doing those things for yourself? Are you doing them for other people? And, when you take an inventory of that, what are the things that you can let go of? And what are the things that, there are things that you're doing for other people that maybe you want to keep doing those things for other people, but maybe there's a lot of things that you're doing for other people that you're really not doing for yourself. And that's a lot. You're like hemorrhaging time, energy, money, simply because you have not been able to set boundaries.
Yeah.
It's language too. Like, for example, a lot of times women want to be liked. We so don't want to piss somebody off. So we say maybe. And what we don't realize is that's misleading. An honest no is so much better than a misleading maybe, because the other person hears maybe. They don't hear no. And we think, but I said maybe, I didn't say yes. It's not what we said.
Yeah.
And I think we hedge language and we don't realize that the impact it has on the person receiving it because they're not in our heads. And I think we also have to get clear and right with ourselves. Like the example Melissa gave, like I wasn't upset about it. I just figured she didn't get back to me because she didn't know how to say no to me.
Yeah.
So the issue wasn't that I thought she was being, mean or anything. I just thought she didn't have the language or she didn't want to disappoint me by saying no. So
Right.
I said, okay, well, that's fine. I'm just going to, and allowed us to talk about it. And sometimes I think that, silence can be a no. Silence can also be I'm unclear. And I think we have to get right with the language with ourselves so that we're clear with the language that we give outward.
Yeah, I agree. I think, one of the things that a lot of my clients will struggle with is that they haven't heard back from a potential client and it's in, and then they're being either ghosted or there's just silence. And like, what does this silence mean? And to me, setting boundaries says, I ask the question, what does your silence mean? As opposed to sitting around and like pontificating and coming up with different ideas about what that silence could mean, because then I'm worried and struggling instead of just like, calling it into question. I think sometimes people don't do that because they don't want to hear the boundary of no. They want it to live in the land of the potential yes. And I feel like a lot of times boundaries being fuzzy actually serves us, which is confusing. So can you guys talk about like that as an idea and like what we can do to make that better?
Well, when the boundaries are fuzzy, then it allows you to kind of you can kind of you don't have to take responsibility. Whereas when you lay down a very clear boundary, then it's up to you to really hold and maintain that boundary. It's like if you have a service mark or a what is that called?
Registered trademark.
A registered trademark. You have to maintain that.
Yeah.
So if you see somebody violating it, you have to go after them and say to them, that's not okay for you to use that. That's my registered trademark.
Yeah.
And if you decline to do that and you don't maintain that, then you lose the right to hold that registered trademark. So it's the same thing with a boundary. If you lay down, if you put that line in the sand, then you're going to have to, have your sort of little soldiers up there and really hold that line in the sand. And what happens is when you draw that line in the sand, people are going to test it.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to push back on it. And that can be uncomfortable.
Yeah,
right.
For sure. Kathy, can you speak to boundary testing? What does that look like? And I kind of know how it feels.
Oh yeah, no, it's 100% true. I think when we lay down a boundary, we are setting a line in the sand. And what we're saying to that person is, here's the line in the sand, which means when that person crosses it, we have to do one of two things, right? We either ignore it, we lose, or we have to defend it. So I think it's 100% what Melissa says. And the thing is that, and Melissa's heard me say this, like I have an escalation path. I have that's the boundary, that's what it is. And I'm sorry, I can't help you at this time, but this is what it is. And by the third time, somebody hits what I call my electrified fence. There's only so many times where I feel like the message of here's my boundary can be said without sort of a consequence. And I feel like there are times where people will test your boundaries. One, it's because they don't have good boundaries themselves, not because they're bad people, but the people who test boundaries, they lack boundaries themselves.
So they don't recognize them.
That's right.
Absolutely. Because anybody who has a healthy boundary for their own time respects when somebody else respects their own time because you respect yours. So I find it a lot with people who don't draw good boundaries for themselves. They don't know how to, and it's shocking to them that somebody would draw a boundary. And I think it can set up for potential conflict, as Melissa says, and we hate conflict because as long as our boundaries are squishy, it's that Schrodinger's cat thing. Well, if I don't open the box, it could be alive.
Right, exactly.
Probably not. It's probably dead.
Schrodinger's boundaries.
We don't want to look. So I feel like that squishiness, though, sends all kinds of mixed signals that can come back and hurt us.
Yeah, totally. That makes a lot of sense to me. And this to me is why I'm so passionate about working on this issue with myself, because I feel like I get to model this for my women clients. And when we as women work on these things, we get to do this for all women everywhere, because we let them see it. A lot of times women will be triggered when they see other women asserting boundaries, having boundaries and asserting those boundaries. But to me, that's because they don't yet feel like they can do that themselves. But if you notice, oh, so-and-so is like, doesn't take calls after 4 p.m. What nonsense is that, not being available to me? It's like, well, maybe if you think about it, or like, oh, so-and-so's got a week off and they're not in communication. Like, how dare they? Well, that's always, to me, the opportunity for us to look at how we're not doing those kind of things for ourselves. And what I'll always say is, do you really want to pass this down to our daughters and future generations of daughters? I mean, for goodness sake, start looking at boundaries yourself and work on this and heal this in yourself so that you model this for the other people in your life. And I really think that this kind of stuff starts at home. God, I know that it isn't easy with the family of origin family, but at least with your spouse, partners, kids, and people who are living in your home, I think that's the big opportunity. What would you guys say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you're so right. And I was just thinking about little kids. I mean, if you're a parent, Samantha, you and I are not parents, but I used to work with little children. And if you think about little children, their job is to test limits, constantly be testing limits. That is their job. So you give them and I have kittens, I have cats, and their job is to test limits too. So and God knows cats don't understand the concept of a boundary. So
Nope.
you give a little child a limit, you give them a boundary, and they're constantly going to be pushing. And some adults, as Kathy said, don't respect boundaries.
Yeah.
So your job as the adult, as the business owner, as the adult in the room, even if you're in a room full of adults, is to set the boundary, hold the boundary, and the universe is going to keep throwing limit testers at you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What are some of your favorite limit testers that have been thrown at you, Melissa?
Scope creep is one. That's very can be very challenging to deal with when a client that maybe a client that you really love working with is, you've got the parameters set out, it's all written in your contract and everything, and they come at you with let's do this, and so then you have to establish, well, this is what we've agreed to, so we can talk about how we want to renegotiate something new.
Yeah, exactly. Kathy, how do people tend to push boundaries with you?
Well, I have a saying, hell hath no fury like a person on the other side of a woman's boundaries. I will tell you, because Melissa knows this story. I would say one of the bigger ones that I've seen is where women don't respect women's boundaries. And I've had women come to me that I've helped for free, and I've helped them because they needed it. And then when I drew a boundary, said, look, I'm out of time and energy, and a lot of people are asking me, and I'll say, I can't help you at this time.
Yeah.
And they'll try the guilt mode of, well, if you supported other women, which I'll say, well, I do support other women because I just helped you for free.
Yeah.
So, and I think, the guilt card, I think, is sort of the, that's the, wow, and people will try that because and why do they do that? Because it works. Women largely are like, I don't want to be seen as a woman that doesn't support other women. And of course, it's not true. Having a boundary does not mean you don't support other women.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard a lot of, I've worked with a lot of spiritual people and healers and people like that who, and a lot of us are that in our businesses right now. We just represent as other things. And I have heard in a lot of cases that those kinds of businesses shouldn't charge money for what they're doing. I have a lot of people who are doing, life coaching and peer counseling and spiritual, all the things, and being told that they shouldn't charge money for that. It's incredible to me, that kind of thing. But to me, this is internalized patriarchy and it's unconsciousness. I usually think that that's a kind of thing that, like, societally we are transforming. Who I want us to reach today, especially, are those who are like, I get it. Like, this is not okay for me. People do violate my boundaries, and I try to assert my boundaries, and I didn't realize that I could actually make a boundary there. You know what I mean? So they're sold on this concept, and we're ready to stand up for for all of our, you know, our rights and our, all of the things that should be within our power. That's, you know, we are sovereign beings. Like, that's the thing that I want for all of us. So if someone is like, but I don't know what those could be, and I don't know how that could be, can we talk about those? It can be their time. It can be their, you know, their personal selves, their personal space, their IP, their expertise, and things like that. So Melissa, how would you give them like the first steps in that?
Yeah, I think, you know, it really starts with awareness and starting to pay attention to, where do you feel exhausted? Where do you feel resentful? Where do you start to feel like annoyed and irritated? And, you know, I'm tired. People are taking credit for my work, or no, I don't have time to do that thing. Or, you know, start to really pay attention to your emotions and your feelings, and you can start to do inventory of where your time is going and who it's going for. Who are you giving your time for? Is it for you, or is it for somebody else? And how do you feel about that? And, you know, that's really where I would start, is looking at all of that and just start to pay attention and start to develop that awareness.
Yeah. One of the things we say around here is like anger usually indicates a boundary violation. And so if you get mad about something, that's usually like a good clue on that one. Kathy, what would you say is the kind of the next step once we were a little bit aware of those things?
Yeah, I would say really look at a little mini plan of action for yourself. Once you identify what makes you really resentful, be honest with yourself. That means you haven't set the boundary. So a couple things I'd say: take a step to take the biggest time sucks. Set a boundary, get clear on it with yourself, be professional, you know, be courteous. Melissa and I both have had people set boundaries with us, and you don't have to use a hammer at first, right? Just be professional, make it non-personal, and don't offer an explanation. You know, at this time, I can't help, it's not my focus. And so thank you for the offer, not at this time. Personal is professional. You don't owe 3 paragraphs of mea culpa, which women like to do.
Yeah.
No is a complete sentence, ladies. No, thank you is a complete sentence.
No apologizing necessary. Okay, so I have a crazy idea. I don't know if you'll go for this, but since you both have improv backgrounds, could we set up an improv situation and you guys could role play something for us?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So let's take a typical work environment. My clients, I know you work with employees and companies, but my clients are going to be women consultants mostly who are hearing this. And so I'm going to think of a classic situation. So who wants to be the client and who wants to be the consultant?
I'll be the client.
Okay, so Melissa's the client. So Melissa, you are a large and well-known corporation. You are not the decision maker, but you are somebody who is running the project. Somebody else right above you wrote the check, but you are in charge of dealing with Kathy, who is a consultant, and she is, let's say, leading some programs over the course of this year. And I can give you more details, but I feel like you guys live in that world. And so you can think of what that situation would be. So let's say, Kathy, that Melissa has just asked you for something that you think is maybe going a little bit too far. So what might that be? Oh, I know what it can be. You were supposed to coach, in addition to the program, you were supposed to coach one person from this department, her boss, and now her boss has decided that he wants you to coach the whole team. So big scope expansion.
Yes.
Can you guys play that out for us and let us hear how that might sound?
Hi, Kathy.
Hello, Melissa.
So I'm super excited that you're gonna be coaching the whole team.
So I am excited that that's what you want to do. The original contract that we agreed on was for one person. So now you are actually changing the contract, and I'd love to help you. We will have to discuss what that looks like.
So Ken hadn't said that. Let me pull up the contract here. So you're saying the original contract was Oh, you're right. I see. You're right. The original contract was for you to coach just Ken.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna have to loop him in since he holds the purse strings.
Okay.
So let's make how do you want to handle this?
Well, I think it would be great to get really clear on what you want, maybe stagger it. We could certainly, coach all the other folks that you mentioned, and I would love to do that. It changes the scope of the original agreement, which voids it, makes a new contract. So, what would you like to do? We can go ahead and continue to coach Ken, or what we can do is add an addendum. It's going to change the pricing, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
change the timing. So there is a ripple effect. And as long as you're on board with that, we can proceed with that.
We totally want you to coach everybody. We just think you're fabulous. We're just gonna have to get, I can't make the financial decisions, but once I get sign off from Ken, I'll have to go talk to him about it. Can I get pricing from you on what that would look like to get you coaching everybody? Let's see. It says here that you were going to do 2 sessions with Ken. So can I get pricing from you on what it would cost to have you coach everybody, each person 2 sessions?
Sure. Why don't I actually sit down and think about that and get you just a brief budget, and then you can make some decisions about what you'd like to do.
Great. That's fantastic.
We can go from there.
Perfect.
Awesome. Hooray. Hooray. So just super, right? So here's what I observe. Almost, I would say at least 75% of the time, the person who is boundary violating doesn't realize that they've done a thing. And so merely bringing it to their attention doesn't turn into a catastrophe, which is what I think we anticipate. And again, I work with people in Kathy's position every single day coming to me and saying, oh my God, this horrible thing has happened. And now what do I do? And I'm like, it's no big deal. They probably had no idea what they did. Yeah. You sell consulting more often than they purchase it. And so they don't know that scope creep, or you can't just expand the scope. They think, oh, we love it, we want more. And they don't think to come to you and say, we want to buy more, how would we do that? They just say, we want more. So it really helps for you to do what Kathy did, which is calmly and peacefully assert this new piece of information for them. So just loved how you did that. Any observations from being inside the experience?
Yeah, I think it's really what you said. My experience really is that most people in most situations I encounter, it can be frustrating for you inside of it. There isn't an intent. They don't know. And I would start there. Yeah. That's always the safe bet, is to give people the benefit of the doubt. And, if it escalates, maybe you don't agree, and, but I think you're right. I think there's more fear and anxiety, and we get overwrought. Yeah. And we overthink the conversation. So at least be open and have the conversation first. Get the facts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel like you get better at your boundaries with practice, Melissa? Does it get easier for you?
Oh, definitely. And what I find is really interesting, Samantha, is that boundaries, it gets easier with practice, and it transfers. It's a transferable skill. So if I get the better I get at asserting a boundary in one area, it's helpful in another area. And also at the same time, while I get better at sort of being a boundary badass in general, I continue to discover areas of my life where I suck at boundaries. So it's just sort of this lifelong... lifelong self-development of becoming a boundary badass is what it is.
Yeah, it's ongoing for sure. So if we could just do one-liners of a few other situations. Yeah. So you have a packed weekend and you're kind of fried, but you're the client would like you to stay and do a little more work on Friday afternoon. What might you say, Melissa?
I would love to help you, but I actually am not able to stay today. Thank you.
Good. Um, Client asks you, a potential client, they're reading through the agreement. You've just presented the price, Kathy, and they're like, well, I see it's 120,000. Could you do it for 95,000?
I'd love to work with you at this level that we agreed on. Changing the price changes the scope. So if we're going to go to that level and that's what you have, we're going to have to take some things of value out of that to get to that price. Would you like to do that? Or would you like to keep the value you have at 120,000?
Got it. Of course, I'd like to keep the value I had.
You can't have it for 95, folks.
Then no. Good. Let's see other dreadful things that I have heard. Do you guys have a good one that you dislike? Melissa, I have a client, and I would love to bring in what you do. Do you think that you could come in and do that just for the exposure? I really don't have the budget to pay you for it, but I think it'd be really good exposure to get you in front of this client.
Oh, thanks so much for thinking of me, but I don't do work just for exposure.
Why not?
Well, my work is valuable, so if you have budget to pay me, we can talk about that. But I don't do work just for exposure.
I see. Okay. Look who's all proud of herself. And her value, big Miss Value.
She thinks she is having value and
imagine that. Love it. Those are great. Those are the ones that come easily to mind. How about Mom? Go ahead, Kathy.
I was gonna say that just actually happened to me. Would you come in and do a keynote for free for International Women's Day? No, I'm sorry, I can't. Well, we don't have money for blah, blah. You know what? Here's an idea of what I did for another client and how they pooled their employee resource group money with a couple other tech companies. I'm happy to give you like 5 minutes on the phone to see if that idea might help you find some budget. Would you like to do that?
Love that idea. That idea. Yes. And I don't I prefer don't to can't, but yes, I don't do that. Those are great ones. And then we don't apologize. Okay. How about, we have got a really good thing going, with a trip to the Bahamas, but Mom wants us to come home to be with the whole family for, Thanksgiving. Anybody want to take that one on?
Hey, you know what, Mom, we love visiting with you. So we're already committed to this and we can't wait to see you. In fact, we'll add a little extra time at the Christmas holidays. At Thanksgiving, we're already booked here.
Super.
Nice.
Super. It's not so hard when you hear it, right? I think this is the thing that is very empowering is like, just let me hear what that would sound like for me to stand up for myself and to assert my boundaries. And what I would say on the internal ones that I talked about earlier, you promised. So if I am working and I look and I promised myself I would stop at what time. By the way, a really good way to thwart this in yourself is to not get clear. Well, I want to get to bed at 10 p.m. So what time do you need to stop working if you're going to get to bed? Okay. So I'll be vague and it'll be 9:55 and I'll be like, whoa. So get really clear that I need to stop working at this time. And when I look at the clock and it's time, you have to put your stuff down and stand up and go away, just like you would if it was any other kind of boundary. Boundaries with ourselves are the most important for us to learn to keep. I feel, y'all.
Oh, totally. And you really nailed it, Samantha, is how do you set up the scaffolding for yourself so that that end goal that you want to getting to bed by 10 or whatever it is, if you need to start getting ready at 8, that's the keystone that has to happen in order for that end result to happen.
Super. I love that term. And that really makes sense. Okay. You both have a program that has the name that I love, which is Kiss My Boundaries. Kathy, tell us a little bit more about your program, who it's for, and how it works.
Well, our program is for busy professional women that are like, oh my God, I've spent so much time and money and energy and resources, and I can't do that anymore. And I need help. And I know there's a better way. And we are going to get into tips on how to set boundaries. But first, we're going to back up and discover, what does that look like? How do you know when you have boundary issues? We have to clue into our emotions, as Melissa said earlier, our resentment. Where there's resentment, there's a little bit of like, maybe we got to take some responsibility. So we're going to talk about what that looks like, how to do it, what are some playful tips and tools, some systems. We're going to give you systems, because sometimes, you go to these kind of workshops, and if you don't have systems and tools in place to support you afterwards, it's hard to stick to that. We're going to give you scripts that Melissa and I have used in our own businesses and our own lives. So I think we're just going to demystify and take some of the fear out of this worry of potential conflict that keeps us stuck.
Yeah. Nothing should keep us stuck from that. Awesome. And did you want to add anything to that, Melissa?
Yeah, and it's all virtual, and it's over the course of 3 sessions on Zoom, and not recorded, because we want it to be a psychologically safe space.
That's a great
and
idea.
all using fun, playful, interactive activities. So
Which is your jam.
Which is our jam.
Yeah, and you get to role play, and if and things like that, and think through some of these sticky situations. So whatever you got going, we're ready for it.
I love it. Make it fun and funny, which is what as both of you do. So I really love the idea of going to something that can be super gruesome like this, and having a good time with it, because it is possible to do that. And that's a great way to handle our trauma in a fun and interactive way, and just to be empowered. I mean, I'm so much about really empowering people to speak up, and I know that that's what this gives them the opportunity to do. So for those who would like to know more about this, where can they go?
Yes. So the URL is creativesandbox.solutions/boundaries.
Cool. Awesome. We'll of course put that in the show notes. And we'll put as well as links to both of you at LinkedIn or wherever you want people to find you. And I think follow you. You're both thought leaders in the work that you do. I find it very universal. If I was an employee in a company, I think I'd be as thrilled to know both of you as I am, because Kathy is posting incredibly fierce, empowering things about women speaking up and using their voices, and kind of talking back, using humor to soften the incredibly incisive things that she says and that she's helping others to say. And Melissa does incredible things with creating virtual meetings that are engaging, and I think there's nobody right now who isn't doing virtual meetings, and God knows not enough of them are engaging and interactive. So would love for our audience to connect with both of you. Any last words of wisdom before we depart today? Melissa?
Just think about what happens when you don't set a boundary that needs to be set, and what is going to change in your life when you do set that boundary.
Amen. Yes. And Kathy?
I think we are so used to hearing and thinking no is a bad thing. But when we say no to something we don't want, we're saying yes and to ourselves. And I want us to reframe that mindset, because it is choosing yourself. And as women, we're doing so many things. We're expected to have all these plates spinning in the air and like look gorgeous while doing it, right? And I want women to just go, yeah, it's okay to choose me and yes and myself. And I think that's what this is. It's not negative, it's positive framing. Choose yourself.
Amen.
Totally positive framing. Love that. All right. With that, Melissa and Kathy and I want to wish you a profitable and joyful consulting business. Thanks for watching. I'd appreciate it if you'd like this episode, and if you enjoyed the show, why not subscribe? Be sure to click the bell to get notified when new episodes drop.